This episode is dedicated to employment contracts. So you interviewed well.
I got the position.
And you got the position. So good job. You receive an offer letter, a contract via email. So you open up your email, and why don't you kind of walk us through what a typical offer letter employment contract looks like, what are some of the main things to look for, and how to analyze it.
Sure. So look, there's a few situations that can happen. You get nothing. It's just whatever the job description said, right? Your salary, your benefits, and you just take the position. You never sign anything. You can get a contract. You can get an offer letter and a contract. Either one may happen. I personally, at 2 jobs I worked at, I didn't have anything. It was just governed by state law. I knew my salary. It was kind of a handshake, and we went from there.
Likewise.
Yeah, that happens. It's not really the worst thing, but it's really not best practice. So when I go into what a contract does, it will paint a picture why. So a lot of times these will come through over email. It's very rarely a verbal thing. You'll get an attachment in an email and you'll review it. First things first, you have time. Unless there's some sort of the doc is like, look, I apologize, but like we gotta move on this. You should give yourself a few days, but you want to act on it. You do not want to wait a week or 2 weeks to review this. I mean, know it's coming. Know that you should have friends or family review it. Know that you're going to spend time. Be ready for that. Don't delay the process. That's not very professional at all. An offer letter typically states some of the overview or main things about the position, and then later on the employment contract goes over it deeper. You can sign an offer letter and agree to the position and ultimately be ready to join and then still not take the position or be denied the position. An offer letter does not lock you in. Neither does a contract in an at-will state. I'm going to get to that in a minute. So the offer letter will have those things. You can maybe sign it or agree to it over written email, but ultimately let's talk about the contract. A contract, you want to look out for a few different things. First thing I would tell you to do is look at ensuring the compensation and benefits are listed. A contract is very legalese. It's a lot of legal jargon. A lot of what's in a contract is what we call boilerplate language, things that are in every type of contract in a given state. I'm going to call out certain paragraphs that you do want to focus on. Compensation and benefits are one. You'll want to look and make sure that that's spelled out correctly. Your hours and duties are another. A big thing you're going to want to research, just go on Google and type in California at-will state. Find out the type of governed employment law that exists in your state. So like California, Arizona, for example, at-will states. What that means is you, as the employee or the employer, can say you no longer work there at any point in time with 0 notice, right? You can say, I'm leaving. See you later for whatever reason. That means you're leaving without cause, or the employer can fire you without cause. Now, in that section of the contract, you'll probably see some other things around termination for cause. I've read employment contracts that say you can leave for whatever reason, but you must provide 60 days notice. And if you don't provide 60 days notice, there can be repercussions to that. So you want to look out for those things, which are understandable and fair, right? So first you want to understand if it's an at-will state versus a non-at-will state, in which case you need to have reason for leaving or reason for being let go, things like that. The next thing you want to probably look at other than compensation, benefits, duties, hours, reason for termination, things like that, is anything maybe around like incentive bonuses. I had a contract I reviewed the other day that said that the doc got $5,000 signing bonus, but they needed to stay for 2 years. And that doctor came back to me saying, I don't really want to sign a 2-year contract. What if I don't want to work for 2 years? I don't want to be locked in for 2 years. And I said, no, you're misunderstanding here. This is an at-will state. You're in Arizona. At will, you can leave whenever you want, but that's just if you leave and don't stay 2 years, you have to forfeit your bonus. You need to look into those things as to maybe, some of the other little side comments there are around typical laws. You want to look into non-competes, right? To things.
It's a big one.
Yeah, things that say, look, for a year after this, you cannot practice within 5 or 10 miles or something like that. There's a lot of argument around that. Technically, if you went to court, they're not enforceable depending on your state, but you don't want to go there. Yeah. Ultimately, you want to just make sure you're comfortable with it. It is a negotiation point. You can say, look, this says 20 miles, let's make it 10. I looked around and I would have no ability to ever work again. I'm not a malicious person, that type of thing. Yeah. I get that when you're in a contract phase, you don't want to ask for too much because you don't want to kill a good thing. But that's not how you need to go into it. We'll talk more about that in the negotiations in the next video. So you want to look out for those things. And there also might be, you cannot solicit patients or the records if you ever leave the practice. Ultimately, you want to look for red flags. The best contracts collect dust in a drawer somewhere, and you never see them again. And that's the way you want this contract to be. You want it to feel secure and outline everything. If there's talk about incentive bonuses, that should be outlined in it. And really anything that dictates the way your relationship is. But don't get nervous or scared by a contract that's really meant to protect you. I would spend time reading the entire thing. Get a cup of coffee, go through it. You'll find things that sound very legalese. Know that that's going to be there, and don't spend too much time on things that seem like boilerplate law, but do spend times on things that are unique to you. Break out that highlighter and look over it. Have someone in your family look over it, or the best situation, have an attorney look over it. Just know that attorneys tend to fight for who they're looking out for, right? So they may want to make a lot of red lines, meaning edits to that contract. That can delay or slow things down, which in a high stakes, you really need this position, competitive area, may not be the most helpful for you, which brings me to my next point. Don't negotiate for the sake of negotiating. That's pointless. Just because you feel like you want $5,000 more because you want to get somewhere in the negotiation or in this contract, don't do that. That is pointless. You will end up shooting yourself in the foot. So do what you want, what matches your goals, what you're trying to achieve for yourself. Don't have an attorney pick it apart and send it back with a million red lines that it's never going to get approved. Go for things that really will help you or really matter.
Yeah, and maybe a big line item too is understand what your classification is as an employee. Are you an employee or independent contractor?
Great point.
Yeah, because that can change a lot of things, and we can dedicate an entire video to that.
Yep.
But
we have content on that. You can look up 1099 versus W-2, but ultimately, really quickly, they're tax classifications. A W-2 or an employee, it's a tax form you get at the end of the year that says you were an employee of the practice, you had set hours, set duties, you showed up on their time, and you got compensated as an employee, but the employer paid half the Social Security and Medicare tax, 7.65%, and you paid 7.65%, the other half. In a 1099, this is another form you get at the end of the year if you're an independent contractor, where you pay 15%, right, of that tax. You paid it all yourself and you were independent. You had your own judgment, you made your own schedule, you subleased your own space. A lot of times doctors are classified as independent contractors when really they are employees. This is going to come up as kind of your number one sticking point and is a little bit tricky. I would seek a little bit more guidance from your CPA or from an attorney on that one if you feel like it's not correct.
Yeah. And I guess just quickly, do you feel in your experience, just kind of looking over contracts, maybe even you yourself giving out employee contracts, would you say that they are basic enough that the average OD could read and understand themselves, or do you always feel like legal counsel is the way to go?
Well, in the notes, you're going to find an attached sample contract here. So I believe that ODs should understand these themselves. I think you can take the time now to review it and understand it and see what to expect and be aware of those things. It's another tool in your tool belt that you should get good at and have that skill. Certain things are much more high stakes, practice partnerships, advanced incentive bonuses, or compensation. That could get tricky. You may want to have an attorney review it. But I really don't think it's that complicated. I don't think you need an attorney. I think that is overkill. I'm not trying to advise people away from doing that. It really is how you feel. Do what you feel is best and don't undercut yourself and just be like, I need to sign this, forget about it. That can have long-term consequences.
So take the time to read the contract, and maybe if you're uncomfortable about something, then you can seek counsel.
Okay, so that ends employment contracts. It's very high level. We have several videos on this. Just take a look in the content resource database there. And we do intend to shoot a full walkthrough on contracts. And we work with candidates all the time around these things, so feel free to message our team and we will help you to give any advice on non-legal advice, but helpful advice around an offer you may be looking at. On to the next step, we're going to be doing negotiations, which has some contract stuff, but also just some general life stuff. See you then.